right, let's do it.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to History Lessons. I'm your host, the journalist Sin-seer, and today my very special guest is Edgar Allen Floe. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Word. Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
No doubt we're going to take it back in time to get to know you a little more and what you have going on in 2024. But for those who may not know, can you take us back to where you were born and raised?
Yeah, so I was born and raised. Well, I was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina, which is about 45 minutes to an hour from Wilmington, near the coast. And born and raised, but I actually had some years up in New Jersey. I have family in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So at a young age, I was, kind of raised in the New Jersey life, but eventually came back to NC. So, I'm pretty much born and raised in NC.
Okay. Take us back to teenage years in NC.
Oh man. So basically starting around what 13, 14, that's really around the time for me when, we're talking early to mid 90s and hip hop was just kind of at a all-time high when it came to, good music, good sounds, and I actually wanted to kind of take it seriously and at least begin writing lyrics. So I started writing around 14. And this was just based on, everything I heard from Gangstar to Ghetto Boys to Ice Cube to Lynch Mob, you name it. And that was also what was so great about hip hop, because you could pick up something from anywhere, no matter what coast you were on or any region, and you could really pick up some good music. So a lot of my upbringing in my teenage years was kind of like that developmental period musically, where I was absorbing so much over the years. And even back during my time in New Jersey, I used to break dance and, look for cardboard with my friends, first, second, third grade, and have a boombox out and everything. And it just kind of developed in my teenage years to begin thinking about writing. And I actually wanted to DJ when I first started kind of taking the music stuff somewhat seriously. I was looking to become a DJ. But at the time, 13, 14, I didn't have a job. So didn't really have a whole lot of money to, try to get some turntables, which, you couldn't do it how you do it today. You had to really get some turntables, which cost some money. So, so I decided to just pick up the pen and pad and start writing. And, once I kind of got to that place where I felt good and confident in my lyrics, started doing a lot of freestyle tapes and karaoke tapes. And I probably still got them somewhere in the studio of just trying to develop and have fun with it, so just a lot of development. And eventually, by the time I hit my senior year in high school is when I really, started to record in a real studio for the first time and started recording songs. And after I had that first session in the studio, it was kind of like, yeah, this is it. This is that next stage of hip hop as far as me and my development. Now it's time to take it at an MC level. So.
Right. What do you remember early on about that North Carolina music scene before you really got out there? Who were some of the early MCs you were looking up to from your area?
Oh man, one thing about me is when I first got to college, I went to NC State University for my undergrad. And the very first thing I started doing was trying to figure out, who was in the scene, who was popping in the Raleigh area. And, I went to the radio station at NC State quite a bit and would literally just kind of sit in the studio of the radio station and just listen. Like, people kind of didn't even know who I was when I first started out in my freshman year. But I remember cats like this dude named DJ A1. He was one of the radio station directors, and he would DJ quite a bit. He had a group that he was managing called Black Jedi Squad, and this was around 96. And that was kind of the first crew that I started to hear about. And then after that, it was just kind of like some other cast. This dude named Will. We call him, he's Will Brown, but he had a crew as well, where I saw him at one of the events at NC State. They would always have different, events and cultural events, and he and his crew had performed. So I noticed him for the first time. DJ Resident, who was a producer slash DJ. He would DJ at the radio station. And then again, I would literally just try to find a way to get into the station because, the hip hop portion of radio didn't start until like midnight. So once I figured out a way to get in, I would just literally just sit there and just listen to the sounds. Didn't care about getting on the radio or anything like that, just absorbing it all. And everybody just kind of noticed that in me and just let me kind of come through until they realized I did music. And eventually some of my first, demos in the studio from Jacksonville, I eventually got played on NC State radio as well. But yeah, Black Jedi Squad. There's quite a few others, Sankofa, several others that were just already bubbling by the time I got to Raleigh. That I was like, oh yeah, it's popping up here, so I need to kind of get in where I fit in. So yeah.
Right. Was Omniscience out there?
I believe, yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I don't recall like really seeing him out where I was on the NC State campus as much, but I do remember hearing his name quite a bit just out in the scene, clubs and those type of things. So yeah.
Right. Cool. So earlier on, you said you was in the studio. This is as a solo artist, or were you a part of any groups before recording your solo demos?
Yeah. So technically I was a solo artist when I first started out my senior year of high school, but I eventually got with a crew. So when I recorded my first song, it was called Mad Mystic. And I recorded with my homeboy named Maul Demolish, who gave me the Edgar Allen Floe name. And he was already part of a crew called the Undefined Cypher. And he had this dude named Sequel 2, who was his partner in that group. And they had asked me to come out to the studio and record on a joint. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. So recorded the joint. Joint was called Mad Mystic. We did a few more songs after that. And then maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 months later, Sequel decided to just do other things. He was kind of an artist, more of like, drawings and things like that. So I think he wanted to focus mainly on that and, maybe family as well. And he actually designed the Undefined logo, which is kind of like this scroll with a big question mark on the scroll and microphones kind of sticking out of the top and bottom of the rolled up pieces of the scroll. So he actually drew that for us. And once he kind of left the crew, I just got with Maul and I just said, hey, we can keep it going and we can be, the Undefined. And that's what we stuck with as a duo and, kept it going even throughout my college years. And, any release that I ended up having, I try to get Maul on every single release. And we do have some plans to drop some Undefined material pretty soon as well.
Right. That Mad Mystic and the Universe, Scrolls of Oblivion, that was like 97, right?
Yeah. You went to the archives. So yeah. Scrolls of Oblivion was the first cassette release that we had back in 97. Again, Scrolls, the Universe, a few others. So yeah, and back then it was kind of like it was a bit unheard of for especially independent artists to kind of press up their own tapes or CDs. So especially from Jacksonville, I mean, we really didn't have much of a scene early on in Jacksonville. So once I got up to Raleigh, and I felt like, hey, we got something that people might want to hear. Let's put some money up and try to get some CDs and cassettes. And once we kind of got to the CD level, we dropped an album called Plan You independently. And this is when, we just started hitting the streets. We would just travel to, Jacksonville, Wilmington, Raleigh, Greensboro, wherever, and just hit up the malls and just, literally just walk around. Hey, you want to, cop some fresh hip hop stuff? And we get a lot of great response from that. And just kind of, just in the streets with the people trying to get our name heard and recognized. But yeah, that Scrolls of Oblivion tape kind of set it all off for us.
No doubt. At what point do you start getting interested in producing?
That actually started around the same time that I actually started recording in the studio. So around my junior to senior year in high school, actually when me and Maul started just doing freestyle tapes and stuff like that, he actually had, and it's funny because I think cats that I know online are kind of talking about old school 12-bit samplers. And we had this Gemini. It was kind of like a DJ mixer / sampler, and it only had like a couple seconds of sample time. And we actually had that for the first joint where we would just find records to loop and just freestyle over. And so we did a lot of that in our first few years and just, developed some, rough demos just for us to listen to and enjoy. And yeah, that was kind of our start. But eventually, once I got through that phase, I said, yeah, and I'm a huge like Wu-Tang and RZA fan. So I was a huge RZA fan. And around that time, RZA's kind of running the game. So I just said, hey, I want to get into production. Eventually, I got a Boss DR5 drum machine, which, at that time was kind of brand new. But I used that as kind of this, sketch pad, if you will, to just try to understand how to use a sequencer and make melodies, and didn't have a sampler on that. It's just a straight drum machine with its own sounds, and that's kind of what we made some of those first demos off of as well.
How'd you come up with your alias for the producing part?
Slice Meister. So that was actually my original rap name before I became Edgar Allen Floe. I was Slice Meister, and it's just kind of this weird association with, again, just being a big RZA fan. I wanted something that just kind of had this, grave diggers type of vibe to it, and that's what I kind of came up with. And I, definitely wanted to keep that name, but kind of as me and Maul were just chilling one random day, he had mentioned Edgar Allen Floe, just kind of, in passing, just didn't even think of it as anything serious. And when I heard it, I was like, wait, you just say Edgar Allen Floe? And he's always like witty like that, just coming up with all kinds of crazy names. I was like, I like that, you know what I'm saying? So decided to keep it, but definitely just wanted to use Floe and Slice Meister as, still the same artist, but just different, compartments of what I do, MCing and production.
Right. Aside from passing your CDs out, what kind of dues did you guys pay as far as some parties, doing shows, the local ciphers? What can you remember about getting you guys' name out there?
Man, I did all of that. Everything that you mentioned, we did all of it, and those are probably the most fun moments for me as an artist, because especially if you go to like a show and you got, well, not necessarily a show, but like if you go to a club and there's a DJ that's rocking out. Back then, they used to always have just these small segments where maybe at the end of the night, maybe in the middle of the night, the DJ would just throw on an instrumental. And he knows that there's MCs, probably in there that want to get on the mic, and he'll just pass it off to MCs for 5 to 10 minutes to rock. And I never forget one show in Jacksonville, DJ did exactly that, put on the Fuji-La remix. And I got on that joint and was freestyling. And there was like 2 other MCs that I remember. I don't remember exactly what they said, but they were just super dope. Didn't know who they were until after that freestyle, and then I got to kind of know them as artists and kind of open up my mind to say, okay, there's some dope MCs in Jacksonville right now, because we didn't know a whole lot of MCs. We knew of a few and those that were down with us, but there wasn't really like a stable scene early on. So anytime you can go to a show, and obviously you want to flex your own skills, but when you can recognize somebody else that's kind of on that same wavelength, you get that instant connection with people. So we did a lot of that. Obviously, when I got to NC State, there was always events going on, either, again, cultural events. That's kind of how the Justus League had formed, just kind of through some of those shows at NC State. And then, again, just basically just having opportunities at shows where you just get to know other MCs, or you just have a freestyle session in the middle of the crowd. Before we even formed any, Justus League based events, we would just attend a lot of events and just kind of be part of the whole culture of the underground hip hop scene, and was lucky enough to kind of form, like, we're trying to do our own thing as the league. But any opportunity hip hop related, I was there. Whether, and I'm kind of introverted, so I just wanted to be in the presence of stuff. But when it came to hip hop, I always wanted to just kind of flex what I did in hopes that somebody would at least say, yo, you dope, and 99.9% of the time people would say that, but I'm always checking out other cats too and be like, yeah, you dope too, and let's see what we can do, or at least exchange numbers and those type of things. So yeah, I did it all. Any opportunities we had, I definitely wanted to have my presence felt there.
So did you guys officially shop your demo to labels?
So it's funny because we actually did 2 things. We did one where I had a demo probably about 97-ish, where I took a few of our Undefined tracks and sent them into a couple of labels, just kind of the old school, submit your demo and hope somebody's gonna find yours out of the pile of thousands at the record label office. And I actually did get a response back from Columbia Records at the time, which I didn't expect any type of response. I'm just sitting at home in Jacksonville, get something in the mail, and it's this letter with the Columbia Records letterhead on. I'm like, yo. So I read it, and long story short, it just kind of said, we appreciate you submitting your demo. We like the tunes, yet we're gonna, we're still looking for other types of sounds and talent, but thank you for submitting, and keep on your journey. And I just thought that alone, I was like, man, I just actually got a rejection from a record label, and I wasn't down by it. I was just like, they actually heard me, and they checked it out and was willing to spend time to actually write a letter and send it back to me from a unknown cat from Jacksonville, North Carolina. So I took that and just kept that as motivation to kind of keep going, and I used that in some of my lyrics for a couple of my songs. I got a joint called it's the Shady Business remix of Flow Freestyle, and it's on a album that I released called Flow Almighty, the Remixture, and it's track 2. Again, it's called Shady Business Remix, and I mentioned that in the lyrics on how I was trying to come up, and Columbia kind of shot me down, but it definitely motivated me to keep going.
Right. At what point do you start your own label? If that's later on, we can get to it. But is it around this time that you start to think about maybe forming a label?
Yeah, around that time, especially when I got the rejection letter, like I was always kind of in tune with business. I went to NC State originally to get a degree in computer engineering, but after a couple of years of me just kind of getting my feet wet in the music scene and just really feeling like, hey, this is what I want to do, I switched my major to business management just to kind of learn the ins and outs of business. So I used music as that exact fuel to say, hey, let me gain some knowledge in how business works so I can, hopefully run a label one day. And I had everything from a business plan from, one of my classes from my undergrad that just outlined the whole label, SWOT analysis, competition, potential revenue, all of that. So I put it all in an actual project for one of my classes and got I think it's like a 95. I always keep it here in my studio, is just kind of just always thinking back on humble beginnings. But yeah, I think I got like a 95 on that paper. So it at least told me that what I'm trying to think through as it relates to business and music, it all makes sense. And eventually in 2005 is when I started my own label called MCEO Records. And that's when I released my first EP called True Links. And I've been pretty much releasing all my own material on my own since that debut. And today, I have a different label, kind of a different direction from when I started. Again, just trying to absorb all the knowledge that I've gained over the years to really kind of think about how do we do music differently in 2024 as it relates to hip hop, but do it in a way that's empowering artists as opposed to kind of going through that same landmine world of bad deals, poor managers, those type of things. But how do we learn how to do this ourselves, all while still being successful in today's landscape? So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Right. You guys released The Tangent of 90 Degrees in 2003. What kind of feedback did you guys get?
That was actually really good feedback. This is when I kind of got more into my production bag, and I started, I was beyond the Boss DR5. I got my first official professional sampler. I think it was a Kai S1000 hard drive rack sampler. It's like 20 pounds, super heavy. You shouldn't even tote it around anywhere. It's that heavy. It should be in a rack in a big studio. And I would carry that thing in a huge cardboard box to a studio from Jacksonville to kind of this place called Holly Ridge type of area, which is kind of between Jacksonville and Wilmington, about 25 minutes from my house, where we used to drive to the studio and record, everything that we could. And I would carry that 20-pound sampler in with me, hook it up, make sure the beat is loaded, get it all sequenced. And I would actually use my DR5 drum machine as the sequencer, since the sampler was just a sampler without a sequencer. So I went through the gamut of just learning the hard way by just trial and error and going through it myself. And yeah, so we did a lot of that as far as recording joints, and The Tangent was just my way of just saying, we know what we got, people want to hear, but how can we, again, let people hear it? And at that time, I think, money might've been tight or whatever. So we didn't really press it up like we did the Scrolls tape or the Plan U CD. It was more like a CDR demo type of thing. But we still kind of sold it in the streets, and it got a great response, especially in Jacksonville. Pass it around to cats in the Raleigh area. They seem to enjoy it as well. And even to this day, there's some joints that people talk about. One is a joint called Moonlight, which was actually on the Justus League NC State of Mind mixtape in 2003. That was my production. Me and Maul was basically an undefined track that we decided to put on the Justus League mixtape. and people talk about that joint, to this day. And anytime we used to perform it, I always got a great response. Joint for the ladies, but it was still hip hop, still dope. You know what I mean? So it wasn't really gimmicky by any means, but it was pretty thorough. So, but yeah, Tangent was one that, again, trying to get our name heard, figuring out the best way to do it, but not being afraid to put a little money inside that goal or that vision to say, hey, let's press up some CDRs and hit the streets with it. So we always had that ingrained in our mind that we know we're dope, but we just got to get our name out there and figure out the best way to do it. And I've always had a mindset of thinking, you can't be afraid to invest in yourself. You know what I'm saying? And I actually, it's funny because I got that shirt on uh, right now, but I've done it then in my humble beginnings, and regardless if hit 500 people and get 500 sales or 5,000 sales, you've changed the life of somebody that have interacted with your music, or you as a person or an artist, right? So we always had that ingrained in us. Whatever money that we could put together to put stuff out, we did it. And I use that as tools to just build upon year after year after year, going into today. We're talking 25 plus years, in doing music, and feel like I'm kind of just catching my stride in some ways, you know what I mean? But all of what I learned over the years, I pretty much have that in place in my mindset now. I'm moving forward. So.
So what eventually happened to the group thing, and at what point did you decide that you're better off maybe going solo?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, again, being a student of Wu-Tang, they did exactly that, where they were a group and remained a group 30 plus years later, but had the options and the business savvy to say, I can go solo, but always keep my crew in mind, or have them contribute to the records or what have you. And that's exactly what we did. So we're still the Undefined. We never broke up, no issues, nothing like that. But as pretty much as Justus League, we're kind of building some momentum. I kind of went to that solo route as a Justus League member, and Maul's down with it. He's cool with it. He's like, hey, and that's helping all of us, right? We're all in this together. And that's kind of how Justus League formed the same way. We're not a group per se. We're a musical collective of individual artists that decided to just kind of put all their strengths together on one accord. And that's how we just approached it. And it seemed to work for us. So yeah, Undefined still doing its thing, and I'm still a solo artist. Maul is a solo artist. He does a lot of dope joints and has some joints out today, videos. He probably got more music videos than I got today as a solo artist. But we just know that our talent just needs to kind of hit multiple channels to get our vision out there. And we think the same when it comes to a lot of things, whether it's, family or music or the industry or just society in general. So if it takes Maul to drop a solo joint to get some message out there, I'm totally in support of that, because I know we're thinking the same ways, and maybe he can hit somebody that I couldn't, or vice versa. So yeah, so we're always a crew, forever a crew, and